All right, so let's look at chapter 19, What's Behind the Mask, the Secret of Secret Identities. And I am running very short on time, so I can't say everything that I want to say about this chapter. So I am going to do a super fast lecture over this. In order to talk about secret identities, they take you back all the way to black and white TV serialization to the TV show The Lone Ranger. Now you all know The Lone Ranger. Hi-oh, Silver, away! Yes? You should Google Lone Ranger. Just go watch it. Then they talk about Zorro. Then they talk about the Princess Bride. And they show you that there are other people besides superheroes that have secret identities. That's the purpose of it. Then on page 251, they actually list out superhero identities, and then to make sure that you're paying attention, they throw in Woody Allen with Alan Stewart Kosenberg, which we know isn't a superhero. They're just doing it to see whether or not you're actually reading. And then they take a very playful tone. They say, just trying to make sure you're paying attention. They tell you what most of these people do, that most of these people have superpowers. They take on these missions to fight crime and save the world. And so then they start summarizing what some of these people do. That's what the next several pages are all about, is summarizing superhero missions, which we've been talking about in depth for this course. If you go to page 254, they finally get down to the meat of things, and they say that for most of the superheroes, getting into an outfit isn't just a matter of psychological self-preparation or of public perception, and it isn't just a matter of dual identities, one had at work and another at home. There's much more at stake than this. For most of the superheroes, a dual identity is primarily about masking. So now they're going to try to prove their point that superheroes actually have dual identities. Okay? And in order to do that, first they're going to start by talking about secrets and why secrets are important and why deception is not always wrong. This is another one of those pages, 255 and 256. That are marked in my book with the circle at top. Somebody please read what's in the yellow.
Secrecy involves deception, and deception, like outright lying, is considered by most good people to be a bad thing. Superheroes stand for the good, the true, and the just. How then can they justify the deceptions and even blatant lies necessary to create and preserve their secret identities? Honorable conduct seems to be definitive for all these classic superheroes. Therefore, secret identities appear to pose a problem.
All right, so the problem is that if you're keeping a secret, then you're lying. But what they say is that deception isn't always wrong. They go on to say deception is not wrong when you're trying to keep the people that you love from harm. And they walk out examples regarding this. On 256, they continue their argument by saying this. Can somebody please read what's in the yellow?
It can sometimes, in extreme circumstances, be morally right or even obligatory. If a lie or deception is reasonably judged to be necessary for the avoidance of great harm to an innocent person, or is the only thing that will prevent an unnecessary act of killing from taking place, then the lie or deception is typically considered morally permissible and morally justified.
Thank you. So sometimes people have to lie in order to save other people. As superheroes, they have to have their dual identity so that they can save humanity. So this is how they're justifying the deception. There's an entire paragraph located on page 256 about deception. The deceptions that superheroes have to engage in to create and preserve their secret identities are likewise typically morally justified, and perhaps can even be morally praiseworthy rather than being merely acceptable though regrettable, insofar as they are reasonably judged necessary to protect innocent people from harm, including prominently those to whom the superheroes bear special obligations, like family members, good friends, civilians, and significant others. In some circumstances, maintaining a secret identity may be just the thing to do. It can be part of the behavioral repertoire of a good and honorable person living in extreme situations. So then they walk you through Superman versus Clark Kent, Daredevil versus Matt Murdock, Spider-Man versus Peter Parker. They walk you through all these different situations that these superheroes face. And then you get to page 262, and they go into their next subsection, switching identities. And what they want you to do is this. They want you to compare Superman to Plato and Batman to Aristotle. And they walk you through why they want you to do that. They say that Plato was all about looking at the ideal and directing the gaze away from details and focusing on the pattern of the good, so looking at the big picture. And they claim that Superman looks at the big picture. Then they say that Aristotle was about the sciences, the practical and the real, that he was an inventor of logic. And they say that that's what Batman does. He creates all this technology to help him fight crime. And so they want you to think about these two superheroes in relation to those two philosophical concepts. They go through both of the superheroes' past and show you how they do in fact act this way. Then at the bottom of 263, they say, the person says, which is Morris, I think what we may be led to conclude in both cases is that the duality has been replaced by a singularity, but with a new fused unity. So do you remember that essay that we read about the X-Men women who had to go through the singularity process in order to reach the superheroic? Matt Morris is saying the same thing. So he's expanding that continuum of opinion. If you look further down on page 264, a similar blended duality enhancing what otherwise have been a singular persona, merely using a costume, in this case, of a newsman for special purposes. This is Superman that he's referencing. In order to support their philosophical concept, they do bring in some science. They bring in heterosis. Now, heterosis is where you crossbreed plants. So you know how every year they name a new rose, or there's some new fruit that comes out, like kumquats, where you cross a kumquat and a plum together, or a sumarai tangerine, all these different things, right? So they're like, if science can do this with plants, why can't we do this psychologically? And that's what they say happens. There's a hybridization that happens between the two identities. On 265, our core identities can grow, develop, and take on new elements that either strengthen us and weaken us. They've walked you through how those things do happen to the superheroes. And they end their essay regarding what a mask leaves. Every mask leaves an impression on the person who wears it, and any mask may eventually become more of a reality than we ever imagined. We are, as always, a matter of how we act, and what we become is the result of the activities we engage in day to day. The great philosopher Aristotle knew it, and so many other insightful thinkers through the centuries like Pascal and James. If we can keep this truth in mind throughout all of our endeavors, we'll be able to exercise a great deal more care in what we become. So, what they're saying is that we have the public persona, we have the private persona that we constantly discuss, but when we discuss superheroes, we need to start thinking of a singularity, not so much of the duality, Bruce Wayne versus Batman. But they have become one, and they've learned to live with one another But it's us, the society, who wants to place the label of two different identities upon them. What do you think about that essay?
Didn't make much of an impression on me, but
Didn't like it?
well, it didn't make much of an impression on me. I didn't really strongly dislike it or like it, but I understood it.
Well, that's good. All right, so the essay that I skipped over, it is the hardest essay in this entire book. It brings in quantum mechanics, physics, in order to discuss the multiverse from a cosmological viewpoint. It is a very intense essay, highly intense. Did anybody like it?
Thought it was interesting, but it didn't seem to be.
Got one white.
Mm-hmm.
Any other responses?
Oh, stop it.